Welcome to Realty Uncut. Our daily shows are powered by CoreLogic and supported by Printforce and Realty.com.au.
Hello and welcome to the show. Welcome, in fact, to our last show for 2021 and the first one for 2022. I'm delighted to say that our guest is a highly respected international digital and real estate leader. Steve Carroll keeps himself at the very cutting edge of digital trends, which has seen him visit and liaise with some of the top tech giants in the United States, including Google, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And he's regularly called upon as a guest speaker on digital innovation, on sales, and of course on leadership. Steve is considered a preeminent authority on digital trends, but it's not about digital trends that we'll be catching up with Steve about in this week's show. It's about another one of his passions, one that I have to say he's been very, very successful at involving a large section of the Australian property industry already. And now he's out to increase that substantially. At Realty Uncut, we're very proud to support Steve with this project, and he's going to join us today to explain what it's all about, how you can get involved, and to introduce two remarkable people who are on this journey with him. Steve Carroll joins me in just a moment.
Property deductions can save you thousands of dollars each year. To make sure you maximise deductions, you need to work with the most experienced quantity surveyor in the country. BMT Tax Depreciation is the leading specialist in the industry. They've completed over 700,000 tax deduction schedules for residential investment and commercial properties Australia-wide. BMT guarantee to find double your fee in the first full financial year deductions. Call BMT on 1300 728 726 today for an obligation-free quote.
Welcome back and welcome to the show, Steve. Nice to have your company and good to see you again.
Yeah, great to be here, Kevin.
We're going to talk a lot about the charity. Now, the charity is called Hands Across the Water. We'll talk a lot more about that in just a moment. But just to put it in context for me, Steve, if you could just talk about the synergy that you see with the property industry and how it relates to Hands Across the Water.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. Well, my grandma used to say there's no place like home. And I think we all agree, especially as we head towards the festive season, that, there's nothing better than having a home with the family. But across the world, there's many, many families and many, many kids who don't have that luxury. And Hands Across the Water are a charity that give hope to many, many children living over in Thailand. And, Peter and Claire Baines, who you're going to meet very shortly, once challenged me to say, well, look, the real estate industry are experts at finding people a home. They're experts at helping people build a future. So can't you pull them together? And can't we do something special to help people that are less fortunate? And that's the synergy, Kevin.
Yeah, you're a very passionate person, Steve, and we're very pleased to support you in this effort. Now, you're going to tell us in just a moment before the end of the show exactly how we as an industry can become involved in helping you raise money for Hands Across the Water. But before we do that, I'd just love you to introduce your two guests and just give us a bit of a background as to why they're on this journey with you and how they fit into the scene. Steve?
Yes, certainly. Well, Peter and Claire I've known for many, many years. I worked with Claire for a number of years at REA and met Peter through that connection. Let me start off with Claire. Claire is one of the most beautiful human beings that you'll meet. She devotes so much of her time to help others, and she's a real giver. And I think you'll enjoy talking to Claire in a few moments. Peter is an incredibly interesting man. He led the Australian response team and went over to Bali after the terrible terrorist attacks in early 2000s and in the early 2000s. And his job in the capacity of being a leader was to obviously try and create some stability in all of this chaos and make sure that those injured Australians returned home, and those Australians that were sadly killed were returned safely to their families. And Peter's story doesn't end there, because after the Boxing Day tsunami, Peter again led the response, went to Thailand and helped, I suppose, again, try and create a level of normality amidst incredible chaos and tragedy. And I've listened to Peter over the years, and obviously in the role that I've done at REA and News Corp, I've been blessed to listen to many speakers. There's not many more inspiring speakers than Peter Baines. I think you'll enjoy his company, Kevin.
Well said. Very good, Steve. And welcome, Claire and Peter. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show. And I guess it's unique in that we've got you both in the same spot at the same time.
Yeah, good morning, Kevin, and great to join you.
Yeah, thanks for having us on the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Claire, and I look forward to talking to both of you. Peter, we'll start with you if we could. That experience that that Steve mentioned there in his introduction to you must have given you a huge amount of takeaway in terms of, you know, working in a crisis situation, nothing more critical in the areas that you were working in. What lessons have you learnt from that you've been able to bring back into business management, I guess? Any stories you can relate for us?
Yeah, certainly, Kevin. It's one of the things I say about working in crisis is it's just the critical testing ground for leadership. And many of the challenges that leaders face, regardless of the area that they work, and of course, we're talking the real estate industry today, is that their challenges in leading people and making tough decisions is no different than what we were facing in the structure that we were building either in Thailand or Bali or Saudi Arabia or any of the international areas I've worked. It's just the context remains the same, but the actual challenge is different. And I think about many of the lessons that I took from my time working in these areas. And I guess if I can just relate one of them to you this morning, and it's really about making tough decisions and having the courage to make those, because as business leaders, our day is filled with making difficult decisions, be that on a personal or business level. And I think the more senior people are in the position, the tougher the decisions that they face are. And I share the story of this little fella on the screen now, and he was in the race of his life, or to be more accurate, it was a race for his life. And he held the hand of his grandfather, and they were running from that wall of water that was the tsunami. Now, in front of them was a building, and it was 50 meters away. And if they could get to that building, they knew that gave them their best chance of survival. But they also knew they were never going to be able to outrun this wall of water, which was upon them. So Granddad got to a tree, and he climbed the tree, and he dragged this little superhero to the top of the tree with him. Now, they made it to the top of the tree. They were cut, they were bleeding, and they had abrasions all over them, but they had survived. Yet there was no wild celebrations at the top of the tree, because when Granddad was running, he had this little guy in his right hand, and in his left hand, he had his younger brother. Now, when Granddad got to the base of the tree, he knew that if he didn't survive, none of them would. He also knew he couldn't climb the tree hanging on to both of his grandchildren. So he had a decision to make. Which one of his grandkids would he take up the tree, and which one would he let go of?
Oh my goodness.
How do you make that decision?
Oh.
How do you decide who lives and who dies? He let go of this little guy's brother. He was washed away, and he did die. And every day since, Granddad was faced with this reflection on the decision that he made. But I think this is the important thing. And the question he asked himself was, could he have run faster? Could he have been stronger? Could he have made a different decision? But the thing is, he made a difficult decision. And that, for me, is what leadership's about. And there'll be many people sitting or listening to this and who will be faced with, significant decisions in their personal and business life. And some will lay awake for nights on end thinking, is what I'm about to do the right thing? They'll make that decision. They'll spend another number of countless nights awake thinking, is what I've done the right thing? But as I say, I think that the real test of leadership is the ability to make those critical decisions and live with the outcome. So I think, Kevin, when I think about my time in Thailand in these different international areas, it's probably that one story that captures for me the difficulty that sits with leaders.
That's, I don't know what to say after that. That's such an incredible story. Steve, you've obviously heard that before. The impact of that story, it's a very powerful message, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, just to echo what Peter just said, decision making is part and parcel of being a leader. And often, and I think I probably stole this from Peter, who said, actually making a wrong decision is better than making no decision, because at least if you make a decision, it might be wrong, but at least you're moving in a direction. But if you make no decision, you just create absolute confusion.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there must have been so many other stories too, or lessons, Peter, that you've learned along the way. I mean, we heard from Steve there at the opening about how many experiences you've had. They must have been fairly harrowing.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, I arrived into Thailand and of course we knew what we were flying into, having spent that time in Bali, as Steve mentioned. But although my working career was filled with death and destruction, I flew in a helicopter up to a place called Bantam Nam Chai and arrived at this community of Wat Yan Yao was a temple. And as we came into land, I could smell the death, and it's an unmistakable smell. And I arrived at the temple and walked in, and all I could see covering the ground was the decomposing bodies of 3,500 people. And it was our job to identify these decomposing bodies because they're someone's brother or mother, son or daughter, and return them home. And I think at the time that I spent there, a lady that stands out for me is a Thai lady who had lost her son. And our role was to return the bodies once they'd been identified, either to the foreign police who would return them to that country or to the Thai families. And this lady had driven 6 hours from the north of Thailand to collect the body of her son. And she came from an incredibly modest family in that she couldn't afford a coffin. And we'd been caught by this once before, where we had to give a loved one back in a body bag. And Kevin, it doesn't matter who you are, no one deserves to receive the body of their child in a body bag. So to stop that happening, we went out and purchased some coffins ourselves to have them on the ready. And this lady arrived and we gave her the body of her son and we gave her a coffin. Now she had to be at the lowest point of her life, but all she could do was thank us for the work that we'd done that made me feel incredibly bad. She had more grace, more compassion than anyone I've ever met. But Kevin, the world's not necessarily a fair place. And for some, it can be quite cruel, because this beautiful lady didn't make that 12-hour journey just once. She didn't come twice, but 3 times she came to our site to collect the 3 bodies of her children. And she kept coming until she had no more family left. And each time I saw her, she had that same level of grace, dignity, and compassion, and made me feel incredibly bad every day. But there was nothing that we could do. But certainly the lesson I took out of that was that we should all, at every opportunity, enjoy what we do or change what we do, because we only get one go.
Peter, they're incredible stories, and for Peter and Claire, for both of you to be going through these experiences is really quite incredible. Claire, if I can come to you, because Steve mentioned at the outset that you've known each other for quite some time, going back to the REA days. What is it that drove you to become involved in this? Because I understand you had quite a big job at REA, and you elected to give it up and go into this full time. What drove that, Claire? Why?
Yeah, look, I've always, growing up and well into my 20s, I was always very much about giving back to others and wanting to help. And it was actually through the work that I did, I bumped into Peter on the speaker circuit. And it was actually that story of the grandfather that sparked something in me to wanting to do something more. And it was I think 2010 I heard that story, and within a month I'd signed up to the fundraising bike rides that he does, and just with that determination to go over and meet the kids and try and do what I could to support those kids. So it dates back about 11 years. Fast forward to 2015 when I left REA, and I think I just arrived at a point in my career where I enjoyed the work that I was doing through Hands Across the Water, and I just wanted to do more of it. So I could see the tangible difference that we were making. We were doing incredible experiences with our bike rides, and I just loved it. It's that whole enjoy what you do and love what you do. So that was my journey out of corporate and into full time with Hands.
Wonderful. Well, Steve, we'll hear from you in just a moment, because I think most people in the industry know about the bike rides. Although I haven't been on one myself, I am an avid bike rider, and maybe sometime in the future, who knows. But there is another initiative that we're going to talk about in just a moment. But Steve, just before we do that, I just wanted to ask Peter one more question. Peter, and that is about COVID. It's been difficult for everyone, I guess, in business to both communicate and operate a business. How difficult has it been for you to continue to fundraise during COVID? I mean, you've got so many initiatives on the go that you've got to continually fuel financially. Has it been hard for you?
Yeah, it's certainly an understatement to say it's been hard. It's been the most difficult 2 years since I started Hands. And the biggest challenge that we faced is that we've built Hands on creating memorable shared experiences, so giving people an opportunity and value back rather than just soliciting donations. So when all of our bike rides and all of our initiatives were shut down, we lost over 70% of our income last year. And we thought that it couldn't be worse this year, but it was. And, I think real success for us, and it's a difficult thing to measure when all you do is cancel events and you're losing, but the real success for us is that at the end of 2021, there's been no compromise on the level of care. We still fund the 20 kids through scholarships in university. We have 350 kids, all the 7 homes remain open. And whilst it's been incredibly difficult for the side of the business that Claire runs, I think it's a true measure of success that we're still around, and next year we'll come out and hopefully return or start the journey to back where we used to be.
Mm. Claire, I'll come to you in a moment. I just want to ask you, what this means to the kids, but we'll come to that in a moment. First off, Steve, I just want to find out from you how we can help. What is the new initiative all about?
Yeah, Kevin, if it's all right with you, before I just answer that question, just going to show a slide, get Peter to talk it through, of a young girl called Jip, because this is, for me, a really powerful story, a very motivating story as well. And Peter, maybe I can just throw back to you, and you can talk through the picture of Jip that we've got up on the screen at the moment.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Steve. And, Kevin, I think that the reason that it makes sense to talk about the young girl Jip now is that, when we measure our success and what we've done, we have these 7 centres, we have all of these kids, and, with Steve and Digital Live and the real estate industry, first through Jealous Craig, we built a home for kids down at a place called Chantanabury. Then we opened a digital learning centre up in Yossaton. And sometimes we can get caught up in these big projects. But as you'll see from this photo of Jip, she's 14 years old and she came to us in May of this year. She is incredibly sick. She has HIV, she has tuberculosis, and you can see from the frailty of her body that I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that her life was limited unless there was intervention. And the really concerning thing for me is just the physical state of her and the fact that she was living with her family and they allowed her to get to this state where she's got festering sores all over her and in such a terrible physical condition. But the upside is this second photo that I show you now of her and just what a remarkable turnaround it's been within that short 5 months. You can see that she's received the medicine, she's received the health care, but importantly, she received the love that was missing. And there's been a dramatic physical turnaround of her. And up until 2010, a HIV home that we support now, kids were dying on a regular basis. And kids like Jip sadly would have died. And the lady that we work with up there has buried 1,027 children in her long, many decade life of running that home. Well, the important thing is that when Hands got involved in 2011, we started providing access to all of the kids, to all of the medicine, all of the healthcare they needed. And something remarkable happened, Kevin. The kids stopped dying. And that's the way it should be, because HIV is no longer a medical problem. It's just one of poverty. And when you provide access, you can do, amazing things. And we can't help everyone, but we can all help someone. So thanks, Steve. It's a good reminder of the work that we do and the change we can bring about on individual kids.
Yeah, well said, Pete. Steve, how can we help, mate?
Well, we've got a Zoomathon happening on the 23rd and 24th of February. So it was an initiative that Samantha McLean from Elite Agent and I came up with after we'd had a couple of glasses of red wine. And we thought, how can we get the industry, this big, powerful industry, to unite and do something really spectacular, fun and caring in 2022? Because let's be honest with you, 21 and 20 have been not the greatest of years. Yeah. And we came up with this concept of running a 24-hour Zoomathon where we'd have 24 real estate leaders looking after 60 minutes. And it would be a little bit like pass a parcel. So what Ray White would own 60 minutes, they would have 3 or 4 guests. So a bit like a radio interview for 60. They would then pass it over to LJ Hooker and we'd go for 24 hours and set a world record. Now 24 is now 33 because the response from the industry has been phenomenal. And not only have we got 33 incredible hosts, but each of those hosts are responsible for bringing 2 or 3 guests. So we've got about 100 voices that will share a wealth of knowledge and learning over a 33-hour period. And we're going to put up a link, which I think is going to go up on the screen now, where people can buy a ticket for $49. And for that $49, you can tune in, you can tune out. No different to when Bob Geldof did Live Aid. You just tuned in and listened to your favorite bands. And when there was a band that you weren't interested in, you tuned out. And we'll be giving everybody who buys a ticket for $49 the full recording, which they'll then be able to listen to for the rest of 2022. So amazing value, $49. You can buy your ticket through the link that's on the screen now. And I can guarantee this, Kevin, every single dollar of that $49, every single dollar will go to the children that is supported by Hands Across the Water.
Okay, well, there's a link down below in the description to take you to that website. I encourage you to get on board. $49 and 33 hours of just... Well, I've seen the guest list. The speakers are stellar, and there'll be so much take-home value too. And great that you'll be able to get a recorded copy at the end of that. You're going to. What's the goal, Steve? In terms of how much you'd like to raise?
Well, we've set a target of 150,000 from this particular initiative. We've also got our first bike ride, real estate industry bike ride in August. I think we've got 20 odd riders already registered for that. So we'll be looking to make another 150,000, 200,000 from that bike ride. So the goal is Zoomathon, bike ride, north of 300,000, and that'll go a long way to helping Claire, Peter, and everybody else involved with Hands Across the Water. And Kevin, if I could just make this point, often the real estate industry, it cops a fair share of criticism, through various people who have had bad experiences. But you know what? My experience of the real estate industry is many, many, many people have got hearts of gold. And once you can get them on the journey, there's no stopping. And it's been great uniting the industry, working with Peter and Claire. And Kevin, it's great being able to share some of what we're up to with you this morning.
Yeah, wonderful. And I guess just to support what you just said, Steve, just look at the number of people who've given freely of their time to be involved in this initiative. 33 of them are bringing along 3 guests each. So that's a lot of people who are supporting you. No one's putting their hand out for any payment, no more should they. But full credit. Claire, could I just ask you, before we finish off, we're talking here about $250,000, maybe $300,000 raised. What's that going to mean to the kids?
Look, Kevin, we talk about different parts of where our funding goes, and Pete mentioned before there's the bigger projects, but it's also the simple things like housing, food, shelter, love. It's there's that part of it. There's also creating education and future pathways for the kids. So one of the mantras that we live by is that every child in our home deserves to live a life of choice. And so by providing them with access to that education, that gives them that choice when it's time to leave the home. And I guess the third part of it as well is, when we talk about children like Jip, and so Jip now lives in our home, she's getting the love, care, support that she needs, but there will be ongoing costs from a counselling and support perspective, and group therapy and different areas and funds that will need to be put into getting her mental health right. While physically she looks fantastic, there's a long way for us to go to get her to a thriving young woman. So there's the 300,000 will have a huge impact on all of the 350 kids that we've got.
It's been wonderful talking to you, and thank you so much for spending some time with us. I wish you every success in what you're doing. And Steve, I just wanted to thank you for introducing Claire and Peter to us and giving us the time to come onto the show to explain it. It's a wonderful opportunity for the industry. The links are below in the description. We'll bring up that website again now on the screen for you to jump in and buy your ticket, $49, and it gives you access to the Zoomathon, which is on, I think you said 23rd and 24th of...
Yep, kicks off in the morning of the 23rd and finishes on the 24th. And the great thing about the Zoomathon, Kevin, when Australia goes to bed that night, the baton will be carried by international real estate leaders. We've got leaders from the UK, from Asia, from the United States, from New Zealand. And so the Zoomathon is very much driven by the Australian real estate industry, but with the help of some of our mates overseas.
Yeah, wonderful initiative, Steve. Congratulations to you and Samantha on a great initiative. I wish you well. We're delighted to be able to support you in this, and anything we can do to help, just reach out, and we're more than happy to do it. Peter and Claire, all the best, and thank you so much for giving us your time today, and thank you to you too, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
So much.
Realty Uncut is part of the Realty Media Group and is powered by CoreLogic and Printforce. See all our shows, Realty Talk, The Property Show, Realty Uncut and Auction Update at realty.com.au, the home of property.